It used to be years ago where the size of the load was always very limited to the biggest crane or to whatever the crane could do. As technology changes and cranes get monstrously bigger and have the ability to pick up tons more than they ever had, now all of a sudden the scale of the load becomes whatever the engineer can design it to be.
And cranes are getting bigger today. We're making more complex lifts, multiple crane lifts, where we'll have 14 or 17 cranes making one lift at one time together.
The crane is the lifeblood of most projects. When that crane shuts down, everything stops, and all hell breaks loose.
There really was a void within the industry for something like this, some way to certify operators, and NCCCO filled that void.
The bottom line is this program's been around for 20 years. And the CCO emblem is the gold standard of certification.
Before CCO, it was basically the Wild West, where we could do whatever we wanted. I ran cranes for 18 years, from 1972 to 1990, and no rules, just kind of have at it and do whatever you can to get the job done. Safety was not a priority.
Well, in those days, there was no training. You learned from one of the operators that you were teamed up with. There was a period there where there was a lot of incidents and accidents because there was no training at that point.
When I first got in, I first got into a crane. They actually said, "Get in there, we need to pick that welding machine up," or whatever. And I said, "Okay." And I just run it. I said, "Well, you start it like a car, and all the controls are written on the knobs, what they do, so just figure it out." Honestly, that's what they told me.
The genesis of NCCCO was within an environment where government regulation was, if not expanding, there was talk of it expanding, and there's an uncertainty as to where safety and regulation of the crane industry with regards to safety was going.
Specialized Carriers and Rigging Association back in the late 80s were having discussions, and I even remember the panel discussion that we had at our convention in Lake Tahoe. The question came up of, what are we going to do about how are we going to make the crane operators better, and what are we going to do to help the industry cut back on crane accidents and the fatalities and things like that were going on. And one member of the panel discussion was an OSHA representative, and he said, you need to try to develop a program, because if you don't, OSHA will, and you won't like what OSHA comes up with. And we had several other members stand up and speak to the point that the Specialized Carriers and Rigging Association was there for that very reason, to develop programs for the industry, to provide improvements and recommendations to the government and other industry organizations and make things happen. And that's what we felt we were there to do, was to make something happen. So several members basically just said, look, if anybody's going to develop this program, it's going to be us. So let's get off our tails and get to work.
In San Francisco today, at least 5 people died after a giant crane toppled from a 16-story building under construction.
So, in November 1989, a tower crane that was in the process of being jumped or having the mast extended came down across a busy street in the middle of the San Francisco morning rush hour.
The crane toppled from the 16th floor of this construction project. The arm of the crane bounced off the building across the street before crushing a small school bus, a taxi, a car, and a motorcycle.
The photographs of that incident speak volumes for not only what did happen, but what could have happened. And I think it really drew attention not only among the industry, but among the general public, and certainly among the legislators, as to how little regulation there was, and how little guidance, frankly, for even those well-intentioned employers who wanted to do the right thing in terms of qualifying their personnel, but really didn't have anywhere to go to get that.
Ours was a safety initiative. I mean, that's what started this whole thing. Why we developed the program is on the basis of safety, and that very use of that very reason for why we developed it as a safety initiative was what brought all the players to the table.
CCO enjoyed from the very beginning such a diversity of industry leaders in the various areas that I don't believe it would be possible to put together that same group of people on a volunteer basis by any outside organization.
It was met with skepticism. I think anytime someone takes an industry where things are what they call normal, and someone wants to change the rules or make things different, everybody's skeptical about that. You know, human nature says we don't like change, so the road right there was pretty hard in the beginning.
It's gone from an infant that was supported by manufacturers and a variety of institutions that were donating money to it just to kind of get it up and going, to now a fully functioning, fully capable by itself entity that is a large entity and the national leader. And it's really cool to see that. It's been amazing to see the process over the 20 years and how quickly that growth has happened. The first impact that they had is they let us know how bad we were at training our people, because all of a sudden there was a standard and there was a requirement that was out there. I found out that some of my guys couldn't read. You know, I found out some of my guys couldn't do math, and these were accomplished crane operators. It was a bad environment, and CCO was the first point that came in and said, okay, these are the standards.
If you don't go back and get training, it's the old saying of you don't know what you don't know. If you don't go back and get the knowledge required that you should have known in the industry you're in to be able to pass these tests, both written and practical, you're not going to make it just because you've been running a crane for 20 years.
Certified operators have a tendency to be more conscious of their environment. They'll pay more attention to how the crane's operating. They'll pay more attention to the maintenance required on the machine. And you'll find that the mindset it changes the mindset.
The insurance perspective, we believe it's one of the best things the industry's ever done. We measure that. We actually have so much faith in the National Commission for Certified Crane Operators program. We give a deductible endorsement in our policy.
The certification has helped our company by first reducing insurance premiums on the financial side. But the bigger gain that I see is just the ability to make or have better crane operators and to make the crane operators that we have the very best they can be.
Our company has made the NCCCO certification a requirement that all operators that work for us carry a CCO card. If they show up without a card, we give them a 6-month grace period to make sure they get one.
TNT Crane and Rigging has a very deep commitment to not only supplying the best operators we can find, but the most certified as well. There's $1 million pieces of equipment out there, but there's also a lot of trust in our customers that they know that we're going to provide them the best possible operators that we can.
The NCCO's most important contribution to safety has been to standardize a process around which operators are certified, and in so doing to raise the bar.
We want to make sure that every candidate gets the same test, gets the same chance at passing the test, and standardization was the key word when we started to develop the programs. We wanted to make sure that a person in California or a person in Maine or a person in Florida got the same test, and one test wasn't any more difficult or less difficult than any other test.
The CCO certification is a tool, a very powerful one. It's been developed according to the highest levels of accreditation that this country has, independently accredited. So just as we independently assess an individual for his or her knowledge and skills, so we as an organization are independently accredited through the American National Standards Institute, ANSI. And ANSI, in fact, uses a process in compliance with an ISO standard that's specifically developed in the international community for certification bodies that certify personnel. It's very specific, very rigorous, very high benchmark to achieve.
I think one of the milestones for NCCO was the recognition by OSHA of our program and acknowledgement of what our program represented and what its purpose was, because this was a first for the program and for our industry.
And when you say OSHA's behind a organization or behind a certification, it's really not going to go much further than that. When you have an organization like OSHA behind NCCCO, it's a win-win situation.
One of the aspects of having operators that are certified is that you know that the operators, in order to receive that certification, have had to go through a training regime that gives them the knowledge that they need in order to pass the test. And so that ends up being directly related back to the operation of the machinery within the confines of the manufacturer's limits, as well as a newfound respect for things like gravity, a newfound respect for the fact that this great big massive machine really is pretty fragile at the end of the day.
There's a study from California that says crane operator certification reduces accidents. I can say in our own company, we've had a lot less incidents, and I can say in the state that I'm in, Washington State, that we've seen less accidents as soon as we required operator certification as well. Once you give the operators the tools to understand what they're supposed to do, they do much better.
It isn't just pulling the levers, it's the whole thing with the crane, knowing what to do with it, how to take care of it, how to prepare it, how to move it. And I think we've taken it to a much, much safer level.
I feel like what happened was people said, look, the crane is critical, and yes, we want to make sure that person knows what he's doing, but there's other people working around that crane operator.
It's not just the crane operator. It is all the aspects that go with the crane operation, whether it's a signal person, the rigger rigging the load, the lift director directing the lift, the assembly, disassembly person.
Not just focus on one aspect of the lifting industry, being the crane operator, but focus on the whole prospect or the whole part of the industry that affects us.
We didn't stand still with just an operator certification. Once the operator certification was up and running, then we expanded. It is evolving, it is growing, and it is becoming a much, every day, a more important entity within the lifting industry.
Every meeting we have, it seems like somebody wants us to certify somebody else. It's like they see CCO as the industry leader, and that's who they come to. And the others pretty much are just kind of following along.
So one of the things I think that's been very important in NCCCO's evolution is these strategic partnerships that we've developed, both with associations within the industry, and then those that we've also joined up with to create new programs. And I think it speaks to the reputation that NCCCO has developed in the industry, that we do have associations that come to us.
If there wasn't a need for it and there wasn't a desire for it in the industry, we wouldn't have 20 programs now. We still only have a crane operator certification program. But I think the fact that we've expanded like we have, and expanded by virtue of industry request and not for the desire to make an extra buck, is, I think, speaks for itself.
The diversity of the people that are involved with CCO, again, we don't come from one or two aspects of the industry, but rather we represent the entire industry. We have regulatory people there, we have insurance people there, we have union, non-union people there, we have general contractors, we have manufacturers. If there's an element within the industry that has something to do with cranes, it is represented at CCO.
The passion that all of these folks have, the years of experience, I'm very humbled to be in that room. I love coming to the meetings because I think I take away a lot.
If you looked at the number of people who are involved in this program, the amount of expertise, the breadth of knowledge, the intensity that came with these people and their love for what they do, from operators to engineers to manufacturers to end users to trainers, and we brought all this to bear in one place. It would have taken millions and millions of dollars to have done what was done on a volunteer basis with CCO.
And the folks who are involved have only one goal. It is to improve the safety of our industry and the safe conduct of anyone involved within our industry. That's the only goal of NCCO.
With the CCO, one of the big things that I think that sets CCO apart is it has a full-blown ethics and discipline committee.
CCO staff does a phenomenal job of following up and ensuring that the right things are being done, that the code of conduct and the code of ethics that everybody signs on to is actually what is implemented. So it's not just a piece of paper, it's actually something that's followed up on.
And what they do is they review any infractions that are reported to CCO, whether it be operators with falsified documentation, drug abuse, any kinds of ethics violations that are in the policies that all the operators acknowledge when they take the test, that they will live by these ethics policies.
You don't get 45 people volunteering to come to meetings 3 or 4 days every 3 or 4 months on their own nickel or on their company's nickel and keep that momentum going for now 20 plus years. They do it because they believe in it, and it's the right thing to do.
As the industry gets more complex and grows, I believe that CCO is going to not just stay with the times, they're going to be leading, cutting edge. So CCO is looking to the future, building to the future, and they're enhancing the future.
We're all in this together, and I think that what we want to do is have a safer place to work and our community be safer. I think we're learning every day, we're growing every day, and I think the next 20 years are going to be as fun as the first 20 years.
And I think the future is going to be fantastic. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We just started. I know we've been doing this for almost 20 years, but it's still just the tip. There's a lot of industries out there that need a program like CCO. I investigate accidents all the time, and it's terrible to see the effect of an accident on a family. And that's what we all strive for, is to make sure that every worker that goes to work goes home to see his family.
But the bottom line is to see it grow from nothing to more than 100,000 crane operators certified, with tons more that are tested, and the volume of material that's there for the different levels of certification. You kind of look back and say, first off, I can't believe it's been 20 years. But at the same time, you look back and say, man, we've made a big difference in 20 years. And that's important, that in a short period of time in a lifespan, you can make that much of a change.